Hey, welcome to another episode of Think Well. I am here with my host, Laura, and I am George. And so we had a guest today. We were going to be interviewing a really good friend of ours. Unfortunately, she had to reschedule. Something came up. So we found ourselves thinking, what can we talk about, right? But on the way here, I was really craving something sweet, like something like a muffin or a cake or something like that with my coffee, which really brings me to what we're going to be talking about today. And what we're going to talk about today is Laura. We're going to be talking about how great she is in terms of baking and in the kitchen in general. And I'm not just saying that because she's my life partner as well, but she really has some interesting ways of looking at uh, food, nourishing, ways that she looks at baking, and how that not only relates to making us feel good when we eat, but also to the community, to the trajectory that food makes. When from the point where it's grown to the point that it reaches our table, and how ethical practices in the growing of our food also play an important role. Things like, for example, like ethical practices, again, in terms of farming, but also in terms of how that food is distributed. Places like restaurants and grocery stores that are also that could be, just like a regular store. It could be a store that sets itself apart simply because of the way that they're handling the whole food production and the whole food distribution in a very ethical manner. And so I wanted to talk to Laura about this. So it's totally improvised, as you can see. But I have to say, I'm a vegan, and so I don't eat dairy products or anything like that. So for sweets, that is really tough because most of the cakes and pastries and things like that, they have at least some dairy in it, and just as well as regular sugar. So it's really difficult to find a good tasting sweet treat that is both ethical, it's vegan, and again, it tastes good and makes my belly feel happy. So I'm going to turn to Laura, and I'm going to be asking you a question, if you don't mind. Many questions about that.
Awesome.
So when again, when we first met, and you told me that you like to bake and do things like that, I figure, okay, yeah, a lot of people do, right? And then you really met that challenge that I had, that I wanted to have a sweet tooth and I wanted to eat something sweet, but I didn't want it to be regular with dairy and all that kind of stuff. So you really impressed me because the stuff, I think one of the first things that you made was what was it? The chocolate cheesecake, right?
Oh, yes.
Vegan
Yes,
cheesecake,
yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I just couldn't believe how awesome it was. And then from that point on, you made so many things, cakes, different types of cakes. But that's not all you do, because any other type of food that you cook and you put together has a story and again, there's a purpose to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, in the spirit of improvising here, I'm going to put you in the spot, but how did you become passionate about food? And I like the way you frame it all the time, because to you it's about nourishing people, nourishing the community. So you take a lot of pride, and you get really happy when I enjoy the food that you've made for me, right? So it's not simply because I'm eating it, I enjoy it, but you really, there's something a little bit more, something deeper there. So if you don't mind talking about that, what got you to be so passionate about baking
Yeah.
and making food?
Thank you. Well, thanks for all the beautiful compliments. Um, I, for me, I grew up with my mom making everything from scratch. And so it would be, soup was never coming from a can. Yeah, everything was made at home. However, her ingredients weren't, they were subpar. So she wasn't aware that canola oil was detrimental for your health. And we had a lot of that, refined flours. So for me, I thought that was normal until I I went to a holistic nutrition program, and I learned, the side effects of canola oil and the genetically modified ingredients that are out there, the fillers, the artificial ingredients to just make more and make you crave more.
Mhm.
So I found these food hacks very just awful. Like I couldn't imagine making something for profit and knowing I'm harming people. So for me, I just took upon it myself. I love being in the kitchen. I love making my own food, and I'm very particular about the ingredients. So I feel like I get that from my mom, making things at home from scratch and enjoying it and sharing it. She always loved to share food. She was the type of person that, a family of 8 would show up and she would make empanadas in like 20 minutes for
Wow.
like 20 people, because it would be 8 plus all of us, right? So I learned at a young age how to really thrive in the kitchen. And then as I got older, in my early 20s, I realized, you look at the ingredients. Well, what is this? If I can't pronounce it and I don't know what it is, why am I putting it in my body? So, with the internet, you can go online and see, oh my gosh, why would we put, these ingredients that are foreign for our bodies?
Fillers,
Yeah, because our bodies, like, we're not meant to be able to assimilate and digest all this. Like, this is why we get sick, right? So for me, I really go out of my way to look at the ingredients, where they are from, where, pretty much like where they're harvested. What really was in alignment with me was when I was living in Toronto and I worked at Choco Soul. Choco Soul, if you haven't been there, I highly recommend it. Choco Soul is a bean to bar chocolate maker. Everything they use there is so clean. They work with indigenous people in Mexico, in Oaxaca and Chiapas, and they work with them with the most cleanest cacao and coffee and vanilla, without exploiting them, and making sure that everything is up to the standards of obviously food standards, but also nourishing wise. And so that really opened up another world for me, where...
And we can, sorry if you don't mind me interrupting, we can plug that interview that we're going to have with Ben, because Ben is an expert. He's been with Choco Soul for a while, and he can really, really talk about, the whole process and, from bean to bar, as you said, right? So that's going to be interesting. But
so Ben is a dear friend, and he opened up a store, a chocolate shop on Dundas.
In Dundas, Ontario, right?
Dundas, Ontario, yeah. And it's doing really well. And he also works with Choco Soul. So he's been with Choco Soul for many years. But yeah, that's soon to come. So going back to Choco Soul, I learned, like, for me, it was, okay, if I'm going to make a cake, I'm just going to use vanilla extract from wherever. But then I realized, well, no, you use the actual vanilla pods and how to work with them. So anyways, for me, it's all about making delicious food that's satiating, nourishing, and it's not going to hurt you. That's my purpose. So I really enjoy creating things in the kitchen, and again, really sourcing my ingredients from a great place. And on that note, I get it. Like, we're very fortunate where we're able to go to different grocery stores, right? I know a lot of people go to big box grocery stores because it's a little bit more inexpensive. We always go to Goodness Me, and it's not a big, huge price difference. I know a lot of people think Goodness Me is like a wholesale, or what do you call it, Whole Foods. It's really not that expensive when you actually compare it to ingredients in other supermarkets.
That's an important distinction, because a lot of people, and you and I, working as health coaches in the wellness space, and I do hear a lot from people saying, well, yeah, I'm trying to eat healthier, but eating vegetables and fruits is so expensive.
It's not.
Myth or fact?
Myth.
Okay, so tell me about the myth of that.
Well, we've experimented. So sometimes George and I feel naughty, and we'll have cravings for vegan ice cream and bubbly water and chips. And we can go into Goodness Me, buy these items, and we'll spend $80. the next day we feel, okay, that was way too much sugar, too much salt, let's just say. And then the next day I'll say, you know what, I'm going to steam some veggies. I'm going to do some, cook some tofu. It's half the price. And we have not for 1 or 2 servings, it's like 5 or 6, if not more servings. So that's not true. I think a lot of people are under the impression if you eat healthy, it's going to cost more.
It's also, a matter of, how you plan as well, right? So I remember, I used to buy the, big bags of potatoes and, and apples. Like they were huge for, I don't know, $1 or something like that so many years ago. And then if you go to a store, a market that has organic produce and organic apples, you can see an apple, 2 apples would be for the price that you pay for a bag. You only get two apples. But, really, when I looked at what was happening is 80% of that bag was going to waste because nobody at home was eating the apples, right? They eat 1 or 2 in a week. And then that most of it would go to waste. And there's ways that you can, make things with apples that are, really ripe. But so comparing, if you are going to spend $2 in a big bag of apples that 90% is going to go to waste, why not get 2 or 3 apples, whatever you're going to eat in a week? You're going to get local, good quality, local, organic, right? So there's the ethical aspect, there's the local aspect, there's the health aspect because they're organic, they're not sprayed with anything. And so it's just a matter of shifting a little bit your perception of things, right? And so again, I see it a lot with my participants. If they haven't gotten to that point where they're making that shift, they're still thinking, well, I can go to Costco and get, a whole box of those things for just a couple more dollars.
Yeah.
But are you going to be eating that, right? Yeah. Is it going to go to waste, right? And so that's also a way of choosing. As you were saying, you're thinking maybe a bag of chips will cost $2, whereas if you get something healthy will cost you a little bit more. You said it very well. I've done that experiment many times. If I go to the store, whether it's a conventional store or a store that we choose because it's it's local and organic, if you're buying packaged stuff, right? You're paying for marketing, you're paying for the packaging, you're paying for the labels, you're paying for so much, and when you buy like the actual fruits and vegetables, it's amazing. Like you say, you can go from $100, which is not very much that you can buy with that if you're buying ice cream and those treats that are very expensive. And then you buy a whole bunch of greens and celery and all the greens, and you buy apples and oranges. And
it's a third of the price. It's not incredible, more, right?
And we're not talking about being stingy with it, right?
No.
So obviously, when we're coaching clients, it's taking them through a journey where they shift. They make a lot of shifts, and one of them is how they see food and how they plan. But sorry, I didn't mean to take you away from that, but that was a really good point because you have been really good at that, right? And understanding that, but not only that, also teaching it to your clients as well. The aspect of nourishing, right? Because that word always comes up. And we know, again, working in the field, we know that good nutrition, right, is important and it actually nourishes the body and the mind. You are what you eat, right? If you're eating good stuff, but if you're eating junk, right? So I like, again, the fact that you always think about food as something nourishing, right?
Yeah.
Can you talk about the nourishing part a little bit more? Because it's not just nourishing my body, but it's nourishing other, areas of my life, right? When I'm eating,
for sure, right? Yeah. So for me, when I make, let's just say, cake or a muffin or the cheesecakes, the vegan cheesecakes, everything is plant-based. When you bite into it, you're not hit with a sugar rush, which is important for me because the moment you eat excessive sugar, it's a vicious cycle. You'll want more and more and more, and that's what happens with a lot of packaged goods and things that are made with a lot of sugar. So you can't just have one cupcake; you're gonna have many, right? So when you eat something that's satiating, less sugar, and very nourishing, you're full, right? And you feel good, not just physically, as you mentioned, but also mentally. I'm sure all of you have done this where you're craving sugar one day and you just go hard. And I we've all done this. And, a few hours later, I feel dumb. like brain fog. I have no motivation. I just want to sit on the couch and maybe binge watch. It's whatever. And I'm not, you know me, I'm not into television shows or anything. So that is really important for me because I want to be able to eat something where it's not hitting, you know, the sugar cravings and, you know, getting that glycemic high and then the low. I want to be able to eat something that's going to motivate me, keep me going, you know, during my rhythm of my day. It's not going to slow me down and my brain is going to be sharp, right? So that to me is very nourishing. And again, it's all about where you source the type of ingredients you source, right? And I'm one to create recipes, but also when I follow a recipe, let's just say it says, and I've seen so many of these, 1 cup of brown sugar, 1 cup of white sugar. There's no way. So I always reduce it to half a cup of, maybe even a 1/4 cup of maple syrup. So it's all about making these little small changes.
Yeah, but I think you go beyond that because, for example, you make some really delicious stuff, very sweet. You don't even use sugar or even maple syrup. Sometimes you use dates.
Yeah,
right?
dates. Yeah.
And so not only am I getting the sugar fix or the sweet fix, but I'm also getting nutrition in there, right?
Of course, and it's helping your digestion,
so
not impeding it like sugar does.
In addition to that, I don't have to eat 10 pieces because, you know, you feel like it because it's delicious, but at the same time, it's satiating too.
Yeah.
You feel like you had actual food when you're eating a piece of, cheesecake or something that you make, vegan, by the way. And it's really, really good. And that's another thing because working with ingredients that are plant-based, 100% plant-based, sometimes, and maybe this for, people watching, if they find out that's a difficult thing to do, or they haven't experimented yet with ingredients like dates, for example, it is incredible how you can actually make it taste not only similar, but better, right?
Oh, yeah.
So one of the things that I've been addicted to since I was basically a child is what's known as dulce de leche, which is a milk caramel, right? And when you put it in pastries, there's ice creams too. With dulce de leche. And so that is really difficult to duplicate, as a vegan, but you've been able to do that, right? You've done it with dates, and it's just as delicious. And there, for me, there's, as the consumer, so just it's looking at it from the perspective of for just people consuming it or the person consuming it and eating it, it's just it's just super empowering to know that I can make my choices, whether it's on ethical basis or health reasons, but I can make those choices but not sacrifice the experience, right?
Yeah.
That something like that is supposed to give you, right? And I hope that that's another thing that people can take away, is the fact that there is no sacrifice. Sometimes we think about people shifting to a healthier diet, or in my case, for example, if it's more like an ethical thing, you want to shift to a plant-based diet, and you don't really have to make sacrifices. In fact, sometimes you actually gain a lot more.
Yeah.
And then in the case of your baking and your cooking, I can tell you from experience, I never feel like there's anything missing or that I had to give up anything, because you make it look so simple how you make these foods that are so nourishing, and I never have to think about it's not the same as, I don't know,
dulce de leche, but it is.
Or it is, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, so it's interesting. So, your passion has always been, food, and you made mention of it. But what really fulfills you is making that food for other people and seeing how other people are enjoying it, right? And this it also, speaks to that community aspect of sharing food, right? There's nothing like making something and sharing it with people, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
What makes you so happy about sharing with people?
Well, it's the whole concept of, breaking bread with loved ones and being a part of that. I love showing up and people have a great spread and, digging right in and having great conversations. I love even more being able to create everything and offer it and, get feedback. And I'm always like open to feedback. Someone says, oh, this is too salty or too sweet. Great, good to know, right? But yeah, I just, it's just, I love nourishing people. I love being able to, make my own crackers, make my own, muffins, my own whatever, and offer it to people. I think there's something about having that autonomy of making my own and sharing it. And, it's all about community. It's all about, and this is, going to what I'm planning right now is, so for many years, as you know, I've been wanting to share my food and I've been stopping myself a lot.
I'm going to ask you that question. I want to get there, but before I wanted to explore something else, right? So I love that that community aspect, but you take pride in sharing with people and people give you feedback. And I can only think of, for example, that's your creation, right? So as a musician, when you write something and you hope that people will like it and give you feedback, right? And they enjoy it. So if you write a song, people are enjoying it, and then they'll give you feedback. Same thing with any sort of intellectual content. You know that I write and I write a lot of content and for me, if people relate to the ideas that I'm trying to convey, it's great. So it's that aspect of creation that gets recognized. And I wanted to ask you what you're up to now, what you are planning to do, because you've been working towards this idea, and I want everybody to know because it's going to be great. But I want you to first to maybe talk a little bit about the link between Ayurveda and food. Ayurveda has been known as an ancient health system coming from India, very close to yoga. You can explain it better, but it's really fascinating how food plays a huge role in there, right?
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that connection with
food absolutely.
And maybe the constitutions?
Yeah. So with Ayurveda, it's very important. There's so much to cover with Ayurveda, but basically there's 3 different doshas and they're all made up of the 5 elements. And we all have these doshas, these constitutions and all the elements. Some of us have increased fire, some of us have increased water, some of us have increased earth. So it really varies person to person. It's not one size fits all. And the food that you eat is really important. And also the environment you're in, your career, the colors you wear, like it's very customized for the individual. And with food, this is where I love to incorporate Ayurveda, because like if I know, for instance, you being a pitta, so your fire and water energy more so than most of the elements, I know if I'm going to make us something, I have to make your portion with less spice and mine, lots of spicy stuff and lots of spices, because for you it's too much. It agitates
or
your
even
fire.
Oils
or even oils. Yeah. So for
salt.
instance, I make a really good Asian inspired soup with tofu, and I know like I'll make the broth, I'll make the veggies, I'll put everything together with the tofu. When I'm dressing it, I leave the sesame oils out of yours. I put a little bit of the brown rice vinegar, a little bit of chives and black sesame seeds, and that's it. But for my bowl, I'll put in the chili peppers, the chives, the scallions, not chives, the all the other spices.
Yeah, I couldn't even think of it.
And I just, I drizzle a little bit of sesame oil because it's really not that good for me. But I just, our bowls look very different, and I love doing that because I customize it. I know for a fact, like I'm very good at distinguishing what people's doshas are, and like if I know someone's Avata, so they're air and ether, and they get very cold extremities. They're a little anxious, for instance. Their digestion is very slow. If I'm going to make them something or suggest something, which I have with clients, it's basically grounding food, very warm. Start your day with warm water. Make sure your extremities are warm. Meditation, different breath work. So yeah, it's just with food. For me, it's almost like second nature. Like I know, okay, this person is this, so I'll make this. And so I love to incorporate Ayurveda with everything I do. And food is definitely right there. So
Yeah, I mean, it's different from, again, working, as health coaches and guiding people how to eat, or what to eat and how to plan. We go with, I'm just going to call it the sort of the Western idea of nutrition, which is based on science, of course. But you tell people you got to eat a little bit more protein. So you talk about the macronutrients and the micronutrients. Eat a little bit more protein. Eat a little bit more of this, more of that. You even recommend spices for people because some of them are good, or things like, for example, oregano or things like that, right? But with no understanding of how that will affect the person in other ways, it will still be healthy. It'll still be a better option than, say, just eating hot dogs and burgers and cheeseburgers and things like that. But there are certain spices, for example, certain oils, certain things that don't sit well with me. Like, so if I were to eat spices because everybody else is eating them, because I know that they're good, but I'm going to have a horrible time after my meal, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what I like about that distinction, right?
Yeah.
That you're able to do that. And I love how you incorporate that into, as you explain, even into making a simple dinner for us, nothing fancy. You're aware of, those things that are going to make a difference, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's really important for me because I know the effects that Ayurveda, balancing the doshas, does for someone. So for me, being a kapha, I'm earth and water. So I'm heavy. I'm grounded. My movement is slow. I talk low. I speak low. Like, there's slow. There's just so many things that make up a kapha person. We're larger too, right? By size. Anyhow, so for me, if I were to just live off of sweet potatoes, heavy oils, have a gentle yoga practice and lots of meditation sitting, sounds great. Sounds very healthy, but the reality is that's going to elevate my kapha, and it's going to elevate the earth and water in me, and I'm going to become lethargic and tired and not motivated. So I know for myself, I need the spices. I need to add the spices. I need to, remove the oils. I need to, focus on more steamed veggies, stuff like that, a little bit lighter. So yeah, it's important to incorporate that.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I know that you're excited about the project, and I'm not going to ask you to give all the details about what you're planning to do, because part of it's maybe, your own sort of secret. But can you share a little bit of what you're thinking here? Because I think it's just going to be really important, because, we've talked about it. We talk about it in the podcast, and we talk about food and Ayurveda and, eating healthy, that kind of stuff, challenging some of the conventions around, the way we think about our health. But and I experience this with my participants too. So a lot of the times you can talk about ideas and things that you still have to put to practice, right? So one of the pushbacks that I always get, because I'm very heady, right? And I'm always talking about, sort of the philosophical aspect of something and approaching it that way first. And then people say, but how do I apply that in real life? How do I make it stick? And I think there's only one simple, way where we can call it something fancy and call it embodied philosophy, or now that word is very popular, an embodied practice. Basically what that means is you have to create a habit.
Yeah.
And creating a habit, there's no cool or sexy way of putting that other than it's just repetition. It's just doing it over and over again until it sticks, right? You have to have that commitment. But where I'm going with this is that, so this is the challenge for me, and I think I've been, I guess, successful in some way to be able to convey to people how to embody their, their mindset, what they're thinking, and how to create a practice out of a new idea, right? Something that they need to shift in their lives, and how to stick with it and be consistent. When it comes to food and being nourished and that sort of thing, food is so many things, because we look at the context of, again, we talked about community, we talk about the cultural context of food, right? We can talk about the socioeconomic, political context, right? There could be an abundance of food or a scarcity of food. from that point of view. But the point that, you always return to somebody that's not somebody that cooks all the time, that it's so passionate about food like you are, is always getting stuck with like, okay, how do I make this? I know this sounds good, but how do I do this?
Mm-hmm.
So I know you have a wonderful project coming up. Do you mind like just giving us a teaser of
Oh
what
yeah,
that's
no,
going to be all
I'm happy
about?
to talk about it. Actually, that's something that I was mentioning before. So I'm a like kappa vata. Like my mind is very vata, meaning air and ether. My mind is always moving. I'm always, thinking. And my downfall too, I'm a bit of a perfectionist, which is to my detriment because I'll have an idea and say, oh no, but what about this? No, I can't do that because of this. And I instinctively talk myself out of things. So for years, as you know, I've been very passionate about food. And I've been thinking maybe I'll start offering it in the farmer's market. And then it's renting a kitchen. And then it's this. And then it's that. And then I just talk myself out of it. And quite frankly, I've worked in the industry for many years. And I just know mass production, even if it's, 50 muffins for a weekend, it's a lot of work, which I don't shy. I don't shy away from work. I do enjoy it. I don't find it work, right? I'm very passionate about it. But my whole thing is, do I really want to be selling this? I think I want to share an idea more so. So with that, I realized a couple of days ago, I love being in the kitchen. I love creating. I love sharing. And I love having conversations with loved ones. And so working towards creating my own podcast that's going to be live in a kitchen, not live, but in a kitchen where I'm making the food step by step and my guest will have a story. And, while we're making the food, we'll talk about the nourishment, the Ayurveda behind it, where the ingredients are sourced, little hacks in the kitchen where it doesn't have to be so overwhelming. Now, full disclosure, I'm not a chef, and that was another issue I had where I'm like, well, who am I? I'm not a chef. Like, oh, I have no right to do this. But, what's that called? The imposter syndrome. So I got over that quickly, and I thought, you know what? My analogy is always, well, that's like saying I can't write this book because 1,000 people already wrote about this. But the reality is, if you write this book, someone will pick it up because they love the way you express yourself. So this is how I'm going to express myself, where, again, I'm going to have this podcast in the kitchen with, a guest, and we're going to talk about food, the nourishment side of things, but also their story. So, for instance, if you were my guest, I would love to showcase you in Chile and how to make your favorite food into a vegan, healthy option, right? And talk about how you can change it up based on the doshas too. And so that's my plan. So
Yeah, and that's wonderful, and I'm really looking forward to it. And I think people will love something like that because, we see a lot of shows about people that travel the world and
yeah.
eat sandwiches in Italy, and then they go to India, they eat stuff like that, and they can talk about it. I guess the yardstick that was set by Anthony Bourdain, it's fabulous how he traveled the world and talked about food and then also the context of, food and politics and culture and all that, right? But I think this take on food, right, or making food, it's slightly different, and I think there's a lot in there, right, that people can benefit from. And I can tell you, I mean, from experience, I know that the food that you make is absolutely wonderful. No, it's not only just me saying it, but I know your family, your parents, your siblings, friends of yours, neighbors, anybody that you have made something for, they have nothing but great things to say about the way you cook. So you bring that, that nourishment to people. So I look forward to it. And so it's great that, and you're thinking this is going to be like more like a YouTube kind of thing, video. And stuff like
most likely, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah,
nice.
Most likely a YouTube version of this,
That's
I guess,
excellent.
in the kitchen.
So then you're going to be in the hot seat again, and I'm going to interview you all about your show because you're probably going to have lots to share with us when that gets started, right?
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, well, this has been an incredible interview with you.
Thanks. Very impromptu and
mostly because I'm
uh,
getting super hungry, and so I guess we're going to be eating after
for
this
sure.
podcast. But yeah, thank you for all you do, and again, thank you for nourishing me, because it's not just the taste of the food, but uh, I feel like complete, right? Because it nourishes not only my stomach, but my soul and my mind, and
Mhm.
it's a kind of a holistic experience. So thank
Thank
you
you.
very much, and
Thank
thank you
you.
everybody. Thanks for coming along for the ride, particularly today when we kind of improvised this show. But as you can see, there's always something to talk about, and as Laura says very well, I'm always talking and talking. So there's plenty of that. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.